Magical Delicacy is in this kind of cool, chill crossroads between a Metroidvania and a cooking sim. I talked about it last episode briefly, and I've got to be honest, even kind of what I described last week, having now played the game, I have some context, and it definitely changes kind of what I had in my mind, and I think it's all kind of worth knowing before you kind of go into this game. So, first of all, Magical Delicacy is developed by a single developer known as Squally. I hope I said that right. Skaule. And it's published by Whitethorn Games, who were nice enough to send me a code, which I've been playing for the last few days, so thank you to them. But with that said, you play as Flora, a witch who arrives at the harbor town of Grot. There we go. The harbor town of Grot. And essentially where she's from, there's no witches, so she comes to this town in hopes of kind of finding out more about herself. And as soon as she lands, she gets Tom Nooked into this building that she kind of that she now owns, but she has to pay off at her own pace. And with that, the game kind of just lets you go. And I've essentially described like the first 20 minutes of the game, and it's a little bit weird. And I think that a point of contention that a lot of players will have with this game particularly is that it's a little too like hands off, and so it can be a little bit confusing in those early hours of, you know, trying to figure out what exactly you're doing. And I hope, again, that I can having played around 10 hours of the game now, I can set the pace for you guys if you are considering picking up the game. And also, one thing I will kind of say is that I played the game for about an hour, just, you know, like a fresh new save, played through, and I was like, once everything sort of clicked, I then started a new save where I could just kind of like I wasn't focused as much on like the understanding how everything was, you know, working, and I could just kind of commit to understanding these characters and these world. And I think if we're going to start off with the positives, Magical Delicacy is a really good looking game. It's this like highly detailed pixel art that I mean, it's one of those things where the world, as you're kind of as you're exploring it, kind of starts to interact with the character. It's something that I love when pixel art games do. Essentially, what I mean by that is, like, as Flora is running across the map, you know, she'll run past lit candles, and the candles will blow out. If she hits a lantern with her head as she jumps, the lantern will kind of, you know, sway. And there's pots that are kind of constantly like scattered around the map that you can break when you go over and pick up the kind of the stamps, I think is what, like, that you kind of use as currency in the town of Grot. And overall, I think that, you know, kind of sticking with the positives, the game is super chill. I mean, I said that word already, but I really do think it's one of those games where you have no stress, and it's such a weird thing playing a Metroidvania, a genre that I think generally is associated with stress or just kind of like intensity, because look, like, you can fall off the map and like quote unquote die, but like you just respawn like back on the ledge where you fell off of. If you kind of take like, there's occasionally thorny plants that you'll run across, and if you know you bump into them, you take a hit, but there's no HP, so you're not like dying, you know what I mean? You're just kind of like,
I was gonna say, is there any combat?
There is no combat at all. Gotcha. And so again, it really adds to that, and I think that's all intentional. It's not like, it doesn't feel like it's missing combat by not having it. It's all kind of by design that it feels that way. Now, that being said, part of that is also like the user interface, mainly with like the way you have a quick access menu on the left of your screen, and you can access it if you're playing on a controller by clicking R3, like, so your right analog stick down, and it opens up a little banner that kind of has like anything you pin, so any quests or recipes that you pin that you can kind of keep track of while you're exploring the overworld. And and then there's the cooking mechanics themselves, which, you know, you have this little shop, like I was saying, that you can grow and build. You start out with like an oven and a sink, but then you can, you know, get colanders or cauldrons and cutting boards and other cooking equipment and stuff. Would this be a good game if I never played a Metroidvania? That's a great question, because I think so, because I don't really play Metroidvanias. You know, I'm not again, I'm not good with like those kind of games and you know, like a platformers or anything like that. This is so stress free, and there's also being a Whitethorn Games title. This is has a nice suite of accessibility options, including the option to have easy parkour or like easy traversal, which essentially, you know, as you're exploring the map, there are certain areas that like there's certain it's typical Metroidvania kind of mechanics where certain platforms will crumble when you step on them after like a second or two, or some of them will like disappear and then reappear, and like that stuff will be turned off if you turn on the accessibility for easy traversal. There's also a mini game every time you harvest an item from like the ground. You have to, it's like a quick time event where you have to press the, you know, the A at the right time when the arrow is in the green. You can turn that off too, so it becomes like, you know, you press the X on the item you want to pick up and you pick it up. You don't have to worry about that little kind of mini game in the middle. So you can kind of tweak it there, here and there, to kind of suit your liking. But yeah, it's a very approachable Metroidvania. But that being said, and I know you probably, from everything I've been building up to, you've probably expected it. That being said, but trust me, it's not awful. Essentially, the game is a bit of a mixed bag, and I think the thing that I really want to set straight for anyone that's listening or watching that is interested in the game is that I wouldn't fully commit this as a restaurant sim or a witchy restaurant sim, which is kind of the idea that I had when I was kind of talking about the game last week. Instead, I would consider it more of this adventure game, an adventure easy Metroidvania that has cooking centric quests, because all the quests are food related. Every quest is like, hey, someone asking, hey, could you make me this dish? And then you go and find those ingredients and do it. So that's the big thing. Get that, you know, understand that it's not, you know, again, some people might find that gameplay loop inherently satisfying where, you know, you're just kind of making whatever, you know, suits your fancy, putting it out in the store and selling it. But I think that design wise, there's a few things this game does that kind of give mixed signals in a way. So for example, you have your shop, right, that you kind of are working out of. It's your house/shop, and you have a sidekick. I'm not going to go into any kind of real story spoilers or anything, but you have a sidekick that kind of helps run the shop. But at least so far in the, you know, again, 10 hours roughly that I've been playing of this game, the only way to use the shop, right, is to be in the building. So you can't just have, even though you have a sidekick, you can't just have like, you know, throw a few items into the shop and be like, okay, you know, you sell those, I'm going to go, you know, harvest some stuff or go explore some area. You can't really do that. You really just be like, okay, I have to sell these items today. I'm going to just sit in the house and, you know, wait for the items to sell. To be fair, the items do sell. Like I have so far not had a day where I've put an item up for sale and not have it sell by the end of the day. So they do go pretty fast. It's just that you do have to be there while it's happening. And
there's other things to do there, like while you're waiting for it to sell, or is there like a lot of downtime?
There are things you can do there because, again, it's your house, so you can, all your cooking equipment and everything like that, your garden in the back of the house is all there. And while the house has like a certain format, a certain shape, like the building has a shape, you can actually take up each of the blocks in the house and kind of moving them around so that, you know, if you want to have, like, for me, I wanted to have the compost bin and like the water next to the back exit near the garden, and then, you know, like the cauldron and stuff, or not the cauldron, it's like a brick and mortar thing, you know, where you like grind.
Mortar and pestle?
Yes, there you go. I had that upstairs, away from like the oven downstairs. So like you can kind of mess around with it that way, and that is it offers a decent amount of customization. But when you're cooking, again, a lot of this isn't really like a cooking, like it's not a full cooking sim, because unlike when you're picking the items from the ground, out of your garden or something, where there's a little mini game, the cooking has no mini game. So you are literally just waiting while the food is done. Now, on top of that, it's a very manual process. And again, this could be also by design and by intention. But like, for example, if I was going to walk you through making a sandwich, Nick, in Magical Delicacy, you have to take wheat, so which you can grow in your backyard. So you pick the wheat, you go up, I'm going to describe it as I'm playing it, right? You go upstairs, you go to that thing that you just said earlier, and you put the wheat in and you get wheat flour out of it. Then you go downstairs to the oven and you put in wheat flour and rock salt, and then you let that. Oh, and by the way, to turn the wheat to wheat flour, you have to wait like a few seconds, like 10 seconds or something like that. And once it's done, you can pick it up. Take that wheat flour down, put in rock salt and wheat flour, wait in the oven for like 20 seconds, and then you pick it out. You take that out, and it's bread. Then you take the bread, put it in, either on like an oven or a cutting board. You put it in, and then you add like your mushrooms, your vegetable, your rock salt again if you want it, and then you have to wait another 30 seconds for it to end. There's nothing in between that's like, oh, it's like a mini game to keep you stimulated. You're literally just sitting there going, all right, well, and to the game's credit, that's cooking for you. That's how cooking is. you gotta, especially if I throw stuff in the air fryer and I'm sitting there going, well, I guess I'll stare at the clock. But it's a little too immersive, where I think that it's kind of feels like it's missing something, or it almost feels like the cooking isn't the heart of the game. Like it's like, doesn't feel like the cooking is a center of the game as maybe I would have imagined it previously. But again, it's all about it's in the game. It's in the lore that witches are good at cooking, and so you're able to. I think that's kind of the idea of why the game is so cooking themed. And also, a fun fact: the name of the game is the name of the store, but the name of the store in the game is Flora's Magical Delicacies, but the game is called Magical Delicacy. So keep that in mind. Fun fact for you guys. I like to throw in fun facts. Now, I'm gonna keep talking about some of the stuff that I guess before I keep talking about the stuff that the game could improve with, I do want to say that part of me feels like this game is currently in an early access phase. I don't mean that in the negative way where it's like, oh, the game's broken or there's constant issues, which I think is kind of the general connotation. The game works like functionally from beginning to end. You can play through it, and there is a story there that like it's all there. It's just that it's the thing you'll come across with indie games where you might not have had a wide enough kind of player base or like a tester base, a QA tester, to give enough feedback. So for a game like this, when you're playing it right away, you kind of have to expect, okay, there's going to be feedback that's going to be tweaking what's going on in the game. And earlier today, in fact, there was an update that went out. It was a minor update, but it tweaked, like everything from movement mechanics, like the time for double jump has been tweaked. Prices have changed at certain vendors. There's a whole bunch of that. You can read the list on Steam of all the patch notes or whatever. But so they're already working on changes. So, but just keep that in mind. When I say it kind of feels like early access, I'm not saying that as like as in it's a broken game. I'm saying it's just there's things that could quality of life improvements. That's the key word. Quality of life improvements I think the game could use. The big one for me is like, while the UI for tracking, quests and recipes is super handy and useful, the inventory system is not. The inventory is like, it's like, you have a few items that you kind of scroll through, but then like after, I'm just going to give a number. I don't know the exact, but like, let's just say like there's 10 items that'll display on the home, like on the first page. To see the next 10 items, you have to go to a second page. And then after you get more items, it keeps expanding that way. And I just feel like if it was blocks, simple blocks that you can kind of just move around, it would make things so much easier to kind of navigate through that whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And also, as I'm kind of playing through the game, there's small little quirks that I've picked up on, like the fact that if you're standing on stairs, you can't open the menu. That's a fun fact. Yeah.
Nice.
I found that out last night. But that being said, I digress. So you, let's see, there's here's another thing. The pots. I was talking about how, like, you know, as you explore the detailed world, you'll come across pots that you can, when you walk over them or like hit them, they'll break and you can pick up coins. That is like, you can farm that. Like every time the game, like, you know, you load in, like you go into a house, for example, you come back out, those pots are back. You can break them, get more coins. Granted, it's like, you know, 3, 4, 5. It's very small. But like when you're going through the day, you know, like when I know I wake up in the game, I'm like, okay, I can go from, you know, here to here and here to there. And on the way, I know where all the pots are. And I'm just making these, like, I'm just picking up loose change. So it feels a little weird. I think if you're someone who really cares about like grounded reality and like in your world for this kind of thing, there's definitely things you can kind of poke holes in. Like how is everyone else in this town getting around? Like I understand I'm double jumping over here like crazy, you know, I can boost up and all that stuff. Like, and the game kind of makes tongue in cheek references to it, like this town's a little weird and like, you know, all those weird jumps that you got to make to get here. So that kind of thing. It's there and the game kind of knows it, but you know, if you're someone who's like really like, oh, like everything has to connect and make sense, you know, this isn't that kind of thing. Generally speaking, there's also, oh my god, hello loading, how's it going? Welcome. Also, quick side note, this I've been playing the entire game again, 10 hours on the Steam Deck, and it's perfectly playable on the Steam Deck. Again, it feels smooth. I've had no hitches. Nothing like that. It's honestly feels like playing a game made for the Switch, so it's like kind of perfect for that. And also, while we're kind of going through some of the weird kind of shortcomings and things that kind of just you could improve on over kind of iterations, there's a map that you can get from a certain character early on in the game. But other than that, the game doesn't really give you much else in terms of like guidance. So again, this goes into the part of me that's saying like this isn't really I don't know, it doesn't feel like a game that you're just kind of spending out, like in Stardew Valley, for example, right? Like Stardew Valley, I think a lot of people play. You can go 2 years and like couldn't care less about the story type of thing. This is a game where I think the story is it's, to its credit, it's also pretty interesting, but you have to give it the time. You know, spend the kind of engage with it, and you know that's something that could throw some people off. And when I mean engage with it, by the way, like there's mechanics where you can go back to the person who gave you the map and buy markers that then you can put onto the map, so that you can hand place like, okay, this part, you know, a triangle means a plant, and you can put, you know, triangles where the plants spawn in. Certain characters you can mark with circles. Whatever, you know, you have to take that upon yourself to do. I think some of that stuff will slowly be kind of tweaked as more updates come out, because the developer has already stated that they're working on, you know, like kind of big updates as well as the minor ones they sent out earlier today. But yeah, I mean, look, I'll share my full kind of thoughts on it once I've played more of it over on respawnstation.com. I've gone on quite a bit of a ramble today about it, but I really think that this is I don't want to get away from the fact that this is a fun game, and there are really interesting mechanics that I think people who are fans of cozy, just simple and stress-free games would love. And you know, even for me, right, I'm booted it up after lunch today, and I had it on my Steam Deck. I was sitting here, I was just leaning back, and I had a podcast going, and only when I had the podcast, like only when like there was like story or dialogue, I'd pause the podcast and kind of, you know, pay attention to it. But the rest of the time, I'm listening to the podcast, and you know, as I'm cooking a bread or whatever, I'm just staring at the screen, you know, listening to the podcast. And that's kind of how I've been enjoying playing it so far. But I'd be curious to see like a year from now how this game looks and how it shapes up. I really hope that they kind of tweak all the things that people kind of. I'm not the only one, I'm sure, that is talking about some of this stuff in terms of this quality of life improvement. So I hope those stuff are tweaked so that it can be recommended for people that aren't just hardcore fans. Because if you're not, like, I don't think there's anything here where if you're not already a fan of like this genre or like this niche, granted, I've said granted a lot. I think that's my word of this episode. It's still like interesting mix of like being a Metroidvania and also this cooking game. Like it is still a weird, funky mix, and the story to it, like, you know, I don't know where it's going yet, but like the seeds that I've seen planted, no pun intended, are interesting so far that I'm curious to see where it goes. So it's, you know, it's not going to lure anyone that's new into the genre, but hopefully soon, one day, it can be that game with a little bit of polish. So Magical Delicacy, check it out. Again, my full thoughts and opinions after I play more of it will be up on respawnstation.com, but that's what I think about it for now.
I got one thing that I want to ask you, Sri.
Yes.
I've played a couple of Metroidvanias, and for me personally, there's always one part in the game where I just get horribly lost. Has that happened at all to you, or is the world not exactly so labyrinthian that that's really a consideration?
That's a very good question, and I think it kind of loops into what I was saying about, like, you know, the player has to take the agency. It's really on you of how you want to explore some of these areas. You can, like, the main core areas, you can't, like, you don't really get lost in. You can make your way around, and the map is super crude. Like, the map just shows like a square where, you know, your, like, each region of the map is, and then it just has like dots that connect, like saying, hey, this part of the map connects to this part of the map, and it's like vague connections like that. And you can buy another kind of additional thing at the store that adds like key characters to the map as well as like a little handy feature.
Gotcha.
But and also there's a fast travel that you unlock maybe like 5 hours, 6 hours in, to make traversal a little bit easier and not as tedious, because some, like, verticality wise, there's some, like, you know, your shop is like down right, and, you know, a certain house that you have to get to is like top left, so you're like, you got to go downtown, you got to go up and then parkour around that way and then go back to the right, and it's this complex path. There are ways you can get lost, to answer your question. There are areas that are a little bit kind of confusing, but I think it's just enough where, you know, right as you're like, oh shit, this is like a little too complex, you'll loop back to an area you've already been to, and it's like, oh, I see where this is.
Gotcha.
Like, so you kind of fill out a little hole in your mental image of where, like, the whole map. But there are certainly a lot of things to discover. There's little chests, like little small little trinket chests that you'll find hidden in nooks and crannies for as rewards for kind of making it out that way and kind of testing it. And along with the blocks the platforms that I'd mentioned earlier that, you know, either shake and then crumble away or just disappear periodically, there's another type of block as well that's only activated at night. It's like a cloud block, so like only at night can you know, climb up and get to the certain areas. But here's another quirk. There is a sleeping system where you can, you know, go to bed and sleep for a few hours, but that feature is only available at night. But if it's in the daytime and you just want to get to night so that you can get to those night areas that you couldn't access during the daytime, you can't. You just have to stay up through the day. But at night, you know, it could be like 20. It's on a 24-hour clock, so it could be like 20 hour, you know, hour 20 or hour 21. And then you can sleep for, you know, 6 hours and then wake up in the morning. So it's a little weird like that. Again, small quality of life improvements that it just need to be tweaked and need to be kind of polished to make it a little bit more digestible.
Yeah, for sure.
Seal that. Digestible. Oh my God.